Hello everyone, I am Bree Buonomo. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be starting my 2024 TBR challenge. If you're new here or you don't pay attention to all the end of the year videos that I do, because it doesn't seem like anybody does, I have been asking for the last couple of years to have my audience choose what I'm going to read for 2024. And these are all books that I have had on my shelves for quite some time and had been really excited about them once before, but then kind of lost interest. And I need to get rid of some books on my shelves if I'm not going to read them. So the book pairings, if you want to know all the in-depth, I will leave it up above. I'm not going to go through all of them again, but I am going to tell you what winners were chosen, because I posted this both on YouTube and on my Instagram. Follow me below if you don't. And I'm going to break these up into two things real quick, because one were the 3 books that had clear winners. There was no challenge whatsoever. So the books that were like the complete winners were Traveler by Ellie Delano. This was an ARC that I received forever ago and I never picked it up. And I really wanted to give this author a chance. And when I was doing the video originally and making this a choice, the author actually announced that she got the rights back to them and will be re-releasing them. So I'm not sure if I'm going to read this ARC or if I'm going to look for the updated version and read that. But either way, I'm going to read this. For my author that I was giving a second chance, I am going to be reading Arusha and the End of Time by Roshani Chokshi. This is a middle grade novel. I am excited to read this because I do like middle grade every now and then, and I really like Roshani's writing, but I didn't really like her debut novel and its companion. So I'm hoping I will like this one. And then for a fairy tale retelling, Queen of Hearts by Colleen Oakes one. And this is a Queen of Hearts retelling. It's actually pretty short, so I feel like I will get through this one pretty quickly. Now the last 2 pairings I had difficulty with, because the first one was a book that I missed the boat on that was hugely popular at one point in time. And this tied completely. So I am going to be reading both The Lovely Bones and If I Stay, and they both have movie components. So if I'm feeling spicy, I'm going to try to read and watch the movies, because I've never seen either of these movies either. And if I'm not mistaken, The Lovely Bones was directed by Peter Jackson, who I love because of Lord of the Rings. So I'm curious to see how his other projects went. But yeah, we're going to be reading both of these and hopefully watching the movie. And then the last pairing was between Words on Bathroom Walls and A Tragic Kind of Wonderful. And this smashed it out of the water, which is a book about a kid who is suffering with schizophrenia. And this one actually won. But I do kind of want to read both, and they're both so short, and they're like 6 hours on audio. So even though this one won by a landslide, if I have time or the interest, I'm going to try to read both, because this one's about bipolar. And mental health is something very important to me. I am a counselor, and I love having recommendations for people. So this is where I'm at. And also, I just realized at some point I started reading this book, and I got 30 pages in. Look at this beautiful bookmark. Man, this is what happens, is I'll be in the mood to read something, and then I'll lose interest, and then I forget how many bookmarks I have in these books. There's probably so many in my house that are bookmarked. All right, so that is the intro to this video. A little chaotic, but I don't know where I'm going to start. It's currently June of 2024 when I'm filming this intro, and I may start a book this week. I may not, but when I decide to start a book, I will update you. I challenged myself this year to start this vlog early, so we're holding to that promise, and I'm gonna not put any of these books off to the last minute, because if I'm gonna read 8 books, it's for sure not gonna happen all in the month of December. We're gonna have to do this early. So I will come back when I start a book and let you know my thoughts. Hi friends, so it's time for me to start my first book of this vlog, and since filming my introduction in June, it's now November. I'm doing better than I thought I would, but we're still here. Life happens. So we're going to start with The Lovely Bones. I figured if this is very drastic and dark, as I feel like it might be, this might be a good thing to start with, and then we can enter into something more positive after. And I can't remember if I said it in the beginning or not, but the only thing I know about this is that the main character is dead, and I believe she's trying to, like, we're in her position as a ghost or spirit, and she's trying to piece together what happened to her or something like that. But I can't remember exactly. I've never read this book and never watched the movie. But the goal is to start with this book because it is pretty quick. And I already got the audiobook from my library, so I may read a little bit of this, listen to the audiobook, or just listen to the audiobook full through. If it's a good audiobook, we'll see. We're going to start with this, and I will check in throughout when I have stuff to say about it. And if all goes well, then we'll watch the movie after I'm done with it too. Hi friends! So, it's been a hot minute since I've checked in, and I don't have a ton to say, but I am about halfway through The Lovely Bones. So, I was correct in that this could be a very triggering novel. I did not realize it was going to be so triggering in chapter 1. So just a forewarning, if you are considering going back into this novel, rediscovering it like I am, or rereading it, the first chapter has pretty graphic descriptions of child sexual assault and murder. And yeah, I was not quite prepared for it. Like, I knew something was up with this book because I do remember it kind of being a little controversial. But yeah, it was pretty intense. And while thankfully, like, there was like a line, like, it didn't go into like a pornographic territory by any means, thank God. But there was definitely a point to it. And I think like the author, like, making it so quickly of saying like how this is like brutal and like how we should hold men accountable and we should like understand like how people can become victims and things like that. Like, I think it works for this book, but yeah, it was an intense scene. However, otherwise, like, other than that first chapter, like, it's just a well done book so far. Like, the pacing is relatively good, although it is a little bit slow. Like, you are following the main character in death, and she is observing the life of her family and friends after her death. So from her like heaven, she's kind of observing and just taking in the scene without being able to like alter it. So it's an interesting perspective. In that way, it kind of reminds me a little bit of The Book Thief, but like the Book Thief's narrator is death. It has like that outside perspective looking in, and that's why it kind of reminds me of that. But otherwise, like, the story is well done. I think it has a lot to say about grief and the different types of grief we can experience, and I think that is extremely well done. As a counselor, I could see a lot of people acting out in this way, in the different ways that are displayed, and it makes a lot of sense. I also think, like, given the time frame and the author's own personal experiences, which she has also gone through some traumas that influenced this book, I think that puts it into a nicer perspective of like why she might be exploring the topics she's exploring. But ultimately, like, it is a well-done book so far. It's not super long, but I do find sometimes that like there's a little bit like over explaining or like just overemphasis on areas that like are a little bit more mundane. So it's slow in that way, that like she is examining sometimes just the normal lives of her people, and then other times there's like stuff happening. So the pacing is good, but I could see it getting slow at times. But yeah, that's really all I have to say so far. I had no idea what to expect, but I am very interested to see when I eventually watch the movie how the movie's going to translate, because this is very much a single POV looking on the lives of their people, so she can't be in their heads, but she could only see their actions. And oftentimes when we have people in our heads, I think of like The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, like how that didn't translate nearly as well to the screen adaptation. So I'm curious to see how that will be. That's my thoughts. I'm going to continue listening to this on audio, and I got to go clean up some of my house. So we will check back in later. Hi, friends. So I finished The Lovely Bones. So this was one of the 2 books that I had wanted to read, wondering if I had missed the boat on reading this when it came out, because it was hugely popular, as we know, and did get a movie adaptation in 2009, I believe it was. So did I miss the boat on this? I don't think so. This would be really hard to rate for me because I actually had no problem with the book for the most part in the beginning. The beginning was pretty solid, and it kind of had some intrigue, and there was like some darker elements to it. And as I mentioned earlier, like the initial chapter was pretty rough because it just went there. And I almost kind of applauded that just to really get like the nitty-gritty details and like that this is real life. However, as the book kept going on, nothing more really happened. Like, it just kind of stayed the same. It was sad. Like, yes, we had Susie watching her family and friends moving on with their lives and kind of the repercussions of such a traumatic event happening. Like, her dad later had a heart attack, and that was probably due to some of the stress he was piling up for years after her death. Her sister ended up pursuing a degree in psychology, which is pretty common, I think, for a lot of people who enter the psych field, in like wanting to understand things or wanting to make sense of the world through the mind and like how people could do that. So a lot of those things made sense, but it just really didn't go anywhere ever. Like, it was just very like, here's a day in the life of everybody for many, many years after this kid's death. And I was waiting for it to kind of make more commentary or something. I'm not really sure like what I was waiting for, but it just never got there. And then a main thing, which is definitely a spoiler, but at this point, this book has been out for almost like 20 years, legit. So if I'm spoiling anything, bro, that's on you at this point. I obviously missed the boat and didn't ever have spoilers myself. So I somehow missed spoilers, but I am going to say a spoiler warning here for the next bit of this discussion before I move on. But basically, the end of this book like ruined it for me. I felt like there was a scene in this book that added nothing and actually very much detracted from the book as a whole. Like, I could have been fine with this, like, not really ever amounting to anything, but just like maybe Susie, like maybe moving on with her life in the afterlife. Like, she's like been so stuck having not been able to grow up and watching her friends that maybe in the end it was just her moving on. I think I would have been okay with that. Instead, we have a very, very blatantly non-consensual scene with body stealing in it that it just made no sense. I don't know. It just came out of nowhere for me. The character, so Susie is the narrator, and she never returns to Earth ever in the book, except for one of the last scenes in the book. And basically, so I can stop beating around the bush, in one of the last chapters, Susie has watched her high school crush or middle grade crush moving on with his life, and him, and so it's Ray and Ruth, and they were Susie's like best friend and crush. But Ray and Susie never got to be because Susie was murdered, and Ruth, who just kind of had like nobody else other than Susie, and she was kind of like an outcast. She was also a lesbian, so back in the 60s that wasn't really something you came out about. So they kind of bonded after her death and became best friends themselves. But Susie in heaven has never gotten over Ray and has always like imagined what life would have been like if she could have had connections with her. And then all of a sudden she somehow gets a chance to come back to Earth and inhabits Ruth's body. So she possesses, like spiritually possesses Ruth's body, and then has like this whole interaction with Ray. Ray realizes who it is, and they have sex multiple times. And there's not even a question of the ethical or moral dilemma of one, having a ghost inhabit your body, and two, someone else having sex with your body because of the person, like the ghost spirit inside of you. That was weird. And as soon as it got into that territory, I was just like, what is going on with this book? And then it pretty much ended after that. Like, Susie got to make her peace and have her way with the boy of her dreams. Keep in mind, she was like 13 or 14, so like, these are grown adults at this point. Ray and Ruth are both into adulthood, like in college and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a really weird turn. I didn't like it. And for that reason, like, I just don't know how to feel about this book. I mean, like I said, it did ruin the whole thing for me because it was just a really weird scene. And there's a lot of implications that just don't get explored. Like, the book ends after that. So yeah, did I miss the boat on this? I don't really think so. I do think I will still watch the movie and give you my updates on how I feel like they compare, and maybe if the movie got rid of that really fucking weird scene in it. So we're gonna do that before I move on to my next book. But yeah, I don't know, guys. It was what it was. I don't know if I will keep this book afterwards because it's just not something I think I will ever return to. So this might be going in the unhaul pile of the year.
I remember being seen over the edge of a table. Hi friends, so I'm going to keep this brief. I just finished the Lovely Bones movie directed by Peter Jackson, came out in 2009, starring Saoirse Ronan, Mark Wahlberg, Rachel Weisz. A lot of big names, I feel like, in that movie. I did not know, never saw it. But yeah, so I think this is one of those instances where I think the movie was better than the book. The movie cut out tons of like nothing from the book. The book was definitely like way too long in a lot of ways, and it skipped ahead. Like people were much older. At least that's the impression I got. Like in the book, like they were like it was years after the fact, whereas I don't know, I think they still try to hint at that it was years, but it didn't feel nearly as long. I don't know. They didn't look as long either. I'm just very confused, I think. I do feel like on the sad part, Ruth didn't really feel like a character at all in this whole movie. At least I felt like she was more of a character in the book. They also pretty much erased her lesbian identity, and I thought that was kind of sad. They had like one hint towards it where like because in the book she was an artist and she primarily liked to draw women's bodies, naked bodies even on top of that. They did have one scene and I appreciated that, but it didn't have any other hints that she was a lesbian at all. And everything just kind of moved much quicker in the movie, even though it was a long movie. I am glad that they weren't nearly as graphic in the movie as they were in the book. And I think I even more like this heaven version than in the book. Like I didn't mind it and I thought it was kind of unique. They didn't go into everyone has a different heaven. Like in the movie, it was very specifically a limbo. Whereas in like the book, she kept calling it her heaven. So this felt better and I really liked those scenes and they were really pretty and kind of like this in between. It was nicely done. I think my main issue is still like at the end, like Susie still inhabits Ruth's body. And while I don't think anything actually happens, thank God, I'm so glad they cut that from the book and from the movie. And like physically, other than like a kiss happens. But in the scene in the movie, it's actually more infuriating because the body is in a safe. And in the end of the movie, they are dumping it in like this little ravine kind of area. And Ruth and Ray are both in the building watching this happen. And Susie inhabits Ruth's body. And you think like, oh my God, Susie's going to be like, you have to open that safe up. Like that's not a good thing. Nope. She still literally just inhabits the body to like have a moment with Ray, who is in all intents and purposes moved on. You know, it's been like a while now. And her body just gets dumped and like forgotten forever. Like, I don't understand that. Like, if you have one chance to like make a difference, like, why wouldn't you be like, there's my body, go get my body? Especially because in the movie it's happening right in front of them, literally. Ugh, that was annoying. But yeah, I think if you guys have like listened to me rant about this book slash movie and you're interested, I think I will just watch the movie and I will tell you to go watch the movie. It's more worth your time. But at the end, it still doesn't really have a point to me. Like there's no real reason for this to be existing because nothing really gets solved, nothing happens. It's just very strange. So, that's my thoughts. All right, we're moving on to the next book. Hi friends, so I just wanted to quickly share my thoughts on the first chapter of Queen of Hearts. So this is a young adult retelling of some sorts, but the last like Queen of Hearts retelling I read was Heartless by Marissa Meyer years ago, and it was very much like it felt like Wonderland. So I think I was expecting more like whimsy and more characters to be like who they actually were. But this is more of like I don't know if it's a loose retelling. I don't even know if it's a retelling. I think it's just like a different exploration of the Queen of Hearts. And so far, it's not nearly as whimsy. The first chapter was very quick and there was definitely like names and stuff like that. So like our main character is Dina and she is right now the Princess of Hearts. The King of Hearts is her father and the Queen of Hearts, her mother, is dead. And in the first chapter, like we kind of get a little bit more orientation. Like she talks about like the lands of Wonderland and like their continent, and how like Wonderland is like their country, but then there's like other countries around them. And she talks about how like the cards aren't actually playing cards, they are considered like the court kind of. So like each card has a different role. So like the card, like the suit of hearts cards are people who are like the royal guard, whereas the spades are like the mercenaries, and then the clubs and the other suit, I can't, diamonds, they have other roles too. Like one is like the royal treasury kind of, and the other one is like the like prison guard type of people. So they all have different roles, but they're physically people, and so far everybody in this is a person. There is a man named Harris who is kind of like your white hair character, but he is again a person, and Cheshire is a person. So they're all people, which I thought was interesting. Like I really was expecting it to be like the characters we know. So first chapter was interesting, but basically like it starts out where Dina is like, she has no connection with her father. Her father is like this mean, cruel man who rules with an iron fist, and he summons her to court where all these people are there, and Harris is not allowed, and Harris is kind of like a surrogate dad. Like he takes care of her and looks out for her and makes sure that she does what she needs to do. But like her actual father is the king, and he summons her and basically drops a bomb that she has an illegitimate half-sister named, what was the name? It's something weird. Vitior, I don't even know. This daughter shows up, and I don't know how this is gonna play out. But yeah, basically her dad says that he had an affair 14 years ago, and therefore has another daughter, and this daughter was presented to him recently, and I don't know how it's gonna be. So I did not read the synopsis since starting this book, so yeah, I guess we'll just see how it goes. But I'm intrigued because of how different it is, but I will say that like the first chapter threw me off because I wasn't expecting it to be people, I guess. So yeah, that's where we're at.
Hello, friends. Hi. So, I'm about halfway through Queen of Hearts, and I've struggled to talk about it. And I'm tired right now. It's well past my bedtime, but I am trying to power through to read a little bit more. But I'm about halfway through, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what the plot is. I just have no idea. By the way, I only ended up paying $4 apparently for this because it was a bargain book. But like legit, I do not know. 50% through, I'm not sure what the plot is. So basically, like I mentioned earlier, that this is a play on Wonderland, but it's a little bit different. It's a little less whimsical, and it seems to be trying to have like a darker undertone. Like the father comes out of the gate in the first chapter saying that he basically had an affair on his wife, who is Dinah's mother. There's also her brother, who is the Mad Hatter character, and now there's Vitor, who I think that's how you pronounce it, but she's like the half sister that was the product of the affair and is now like the Duchess of Wonderland, whereas Dinah is the Princess of Wonderland, soon to be queen. The politics are a little wonky. Basically, like she would rule next to her father until she weds, and then her husband would then become the King of Hearts. But I don't know. This jumps around quite a bit. So I trying to like have my thoughts on it because I didn't read like exactly what it was. The tagline is "Evil is rising in Wonderland," and I never actually read about like what the premise was. So let's do that right now. This is not the story of the Wonderland we know. Alice has not fallen down a rabbit hole. There is no all-knowing cat with a taunting smile. This is a Wonderland where beneath each smile lies a secret. Each tart comes with a demand, and only prisoners tell the truth. Dinah is the princess who will one day reign over Wonderland. She has not yet seen the dark depths of her kingdom. She longs only for her father's approval and a future with the boy she loves. But when a betrayal breaks her heart and threatens her throne, she is launched into Wonderland's dangerous political game. Dinah must stay one step ahead of her cunning enemies, or she'll lose not just the crown, but her head. Evil is brewing in Wonderland, and maybe most frighteningly, in Dinah herself. That's it. The first novel in Colleen Oak's epic imaginative series proves heroes can become villains and fairy tales can become nightmares. This is not a story of happily ever after. This is a story of the Queen of Hearts. I don't think that describes anything. It seems very vague to me. This is the type of thing that if like it was a query letter, I feel like more people would be like, you're being too vague, like get more detail. But I feel like it's vague because there's nothing going on. I don't know what's happening. We're 50% in, and this character is like just starting to get to stuff. But like, why does Vitor, the half sister, pose a threat? Why do they hate each other? Like it jumps. Like we have like the first chapter, and then like 6 months go by, and then like more months go by. Like time is going very like far in this book, and we're only like it's also like the spacing of this book is also very big. So like it's a very quick read in a lot of ways, but nothing is happening and I'm struggling so much to be invested. Like I just want to move on to the next book because I'm not having fun, but I'm so dedicated to finishing this and probably getting it off my shelves. But yeah, I know I'm chaotic, but that's how the book is as well. So we have her stable boy friend who is her lover. Like, she loves him. He currently does not seem to have any interest in her in that way, but he's doing some things like kissing her and stuff like that as like a ploy to the plot that they're trying to unhatch. Really, at the 40% mark, we get the first like inkling of like something happening, which is where she gets like this tart that has a message with a name, and like it's a prisoner who's locked in one of the towers. And now they're trying to go and meet this prisoner and get information about like what's like wrong. Like, why did this prisoner feel like she had to warn Dinah? But we don't know what she's being warned about. We don't know why it matters. We don't really know anything. The only thing we know is like, yes, Dinah sort of wants her father's approval, but she's also acting sometimes that like, F him, I don't care about him. She's ignoring the half-sister. Her brother is stark raving mad and makes hats in a separate tower. And she's in love with her best friend who is seemingly not interested in her. And that's really it. So, I don't know. I'm sure I'm going to have to wrap it up at some point and talk about this, but I think I'm going to end up coming back when it's done because I just don't have a lot to say. So, that's the update.
I finished Queen of Hearts by Colleen Oakes. And I don't want to rant about this too long, but I do need to give an update because I have finished this novel. And let me tell you, this is maybe one of the most frustrating novels I have ever read. I think the main issue I've had is that up until 70% of the book, I really wasn't interested. And it took me a lot to like really power through and get it read. It took me like 21 days to get through it. And then all of a sudden at the end, it started to get interesting because things started to finally happen. So I won't spoil things in case you are interested, but I'm just going to kind of give you an overview of some of my feelings, which is why I'm having a hard time deciding like how I actually feel about this book. To start, it is a Wonderland prequel retelling. So I'm thinking, I don't really know. I'm still unsure about the whole Wonderland aspect because really the world that we are in with this book is not the Wonderland we know from Lewis Carroll. There is not a lot of whimsy. There's not a lot of interesting things. This is like an entire, like there's a whole map essentially of like this other worlds that we, like it's other countries and things in this world. And only Wonderland is like their country that they rule over. But there's like, you know, this like kind of like terrible forest. There's like tribes in like the mountains. There's like the plain lands. Like there's all these different types. But nothing actually in particular feels like Wonderland, which is a strange choice for me. Like I feel like if you took out or renamed the little bits of Wonderland that we have, like the Wonderland being its own country, having like the cards as their different kind of factions of government, having like the King and Queen of Hearts, this could just be its own fantasy novel. Like most of the premise in this is really unique, which is why I think I don't understand why it's like a Wonderland setting. And my thought was going to be is that, oh, it's leading up, like these are the events that made Wonderland Wonderland. And it still might be. I just found out that this is a trilogy. There are 2 more books in the series. I only own the first book, which is partly why I wanted it to be on my TBR. But like, it's the thing that is rough for me is that like I feel like we should have established like what some of these other things might be in this book, and it really didn't happen. We just get these names and references, but it's its entirely own story and it feels like its own world. And I actually don't even hate some of the like things. Like I think some of these are really good ideas. Like I like that the sky in this novel, like the stars and the constellations don't ever stay the same. Like, which we don't really get that explained, but it's just kind of like a cool tidbit. And I like the government faction system, and I like the premise of like this tower, like their prison system are these like towers, and the towers are built into a tree that sucks the life out of the prisoners. So like the really bad prisoners kind of get absorbed into the tree. And that is just a really unique premise. I don't understand how it has anything to do with Wonderland. So yeah, I was just really confused, and I think I was waiting for something to come up like that, and because it didn't, I felt like I was misled most of the book. However, when we got into the prison and we started learning about this like tree of Wonderland and some of like the insidious things in it, it did start to get really interesting for me, which is why I'm frustrated, because I really didn't want to continue this book. But then I saw it to the end and I'm like, oh my God, do I have to continue this? Do I need to know what happens? Because it ended on a really major cliffhanger, and it kind of ended more abruptly. Like I thought I had more to go, but the version I was reading on my Kindle had like an excerpt from the next book. And that's why I thought I had more chapters to go. And then I was like, oh my God, it just ended like this. And you left the main character, Dinah, in like this like pretty precarious, like, will she survive scenario. So I was kind of like, huh, it's interesting now. And that makes me angry. But I also felt like it shouldn't have taken me 70% of the book to start to get invested in it, which is another reason why I'm angry at it. I will also say, this is a young adult novel. This got really dark, like really quick. And honestly, like, I'm actually not mad about it because of that. But it's not what I expected for a young adult novel, especially one that was, I think, came out in like 2016. Like we were in kind of like entering our soft girl fantasy era for 2016 YA fantasy. So I was just really shocked that like it went to a lot of places. Like there were deaths in this book that I was not expecting. There were details that were really gruesome and just really honed in on the fact that this is not a good world. There were plots to like how do we move forward. Like, so there was a lot of really interesting intrigue here, and it didn't get like hard into the politics until the end, but like the politics were kind of interesting. I do feel like the main character is a bit of like a little bit too naive at some points, and I didn't feel like her desire to have her dad's affection was always well balanced, because like her dad is super abusive in this novel, and he's such a dick. He's such a dick. So I do feel like that is a thing where like you can hate your parent because they can mistreat you, but you also have this innate want to be loved and seek their approval. Sometimes it was done well, sometimes it wasn't, in my opinion, but like I did like that dynamic. I just felt like this was too short to have satisfied me, because there were a lot of characters introduced and there were a lot of dynamics at play, but most of them didn't even come to anything in this book. Like we have this one scene in the beginning of the book, which it won't be too much of a spoiler because it's like the first chapter, but we have this like, I think he's like the Knave of Hearts. His name is Cheshire, so he's kind of like your Cheshire cat, like who's a little bit sly and cunning, and I don't know what his role actually is because he's kind of mysterious throughout the novel. But in the first chapter, we meet him and he kind of seems to be like helping Dinah and like kind of leads her to this path that does later come back in the book. But like you can't really tell if he's helping her or he's trying to hinder her. And then after the first scene, we flash to 6 months later, and that's like he's never really mentioned as like helpful or not until like the very end of the book, where he has like a small little role again, and I just don't understand what the point of his character was. Like, he really didn't interact with the main character at all. So I think that was a big gripe, is that there's too many characters in this book for our main character to care about and interact with, and they never really worked. So I don't know what I want to do with this. I did get interested at the end, but I don't know if I'm interested enough to like finish the series, because this is going to be the deal. I'm not going to continue this immediately, but right now I want to continue it. If this feeling lasts within a month, I may just do it and see how the book ends, the series ends, but I don't know if that's going to be the case, and I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this. This is so hard. Like, I've never had a book that I just actively am unsure what to say, because there were some really good parts at the end, but like, why do we have to wait to the end? Okay, that's my rant. I don't know, guys. I don't even know. I might maybe rate this a 3. Like, it might have redeemed itself, because I might have rated it a 2 before the ending happened. But I don't know if that's enough for me to continue. So I don't know. What are your thoughts? And while I'm here, I'll just introduce the next book I'm going to read. Which is Words on Bathroom Walls by Julie Walton. So this is a short young adult contemporary novel. It's a mental health book. The main character is a 16-year-old who was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he is going through an experimental treatment, but is trying to kind of keep that side of himself hidden so that he kind of can appear normal to new people at this new school he's attending. So I'm gonna start this. I'm actually kind of like proud of myself too. So this is a movie adaptation. And for the book club that I run, we pick themes every month, and then we have a poll for 3 books to read, and that fits with the theme. So for December, we were doing movie night, which is basically books that have been made into movie adaptations. And since this was on my TBR for forever, it was also on my 2024 TBR, and it fit the theme for the book club, I elected it. And it won. So I get to double dip with this. I get to talk about this in my vlog, but also talk about it in my book club. So I'm gonna start this. And just off the bat, I will say I'm a little bit nervous to read this, because schizophrenia at 16 is not really common. It's a very young age to have that type of diagnosis. It's not something that normally gets diagnosed until your early to mid 20s. So I am unsure how they're gonna handle the subject matter. It's really tough. Like, mental health in YA can be done really well. It can also be done really poorly. So I don't really know much else about this. Like, I don't even know what the title refers to. I just hope that we have some good representation, because it's not uncommon for episodes of psychosis sometimes to occur in teenage years, but like full-on schizophrenia is not normally something that happens. So we'll see. We'll see how it handles the subject matter, and we're gonna dive in. So let's start this book. Hello, friends. Hi. So I'm so sorry. I continue to do this thing where I talk about the beginning of a book, and then I don't film anything, and now I'm done with the book, and that's just how it's going. So don't mind me. I'm actually going to a Christmas party, and it is pajama themed. So I have a Christmas-ish winter onesie, and that's what I'm wearing because I have to leave in about 10-15 minutes. So I really quick wanted to talk about this book, and another I don't know how to rate this because I'm very conflicted with my feelings. So after I filmed the initial clip, I will say that within the first couple pages, might have been even first couple paragraphs, this off the bat does say that the 16-year-old boy, Adam, does have schizophrenia. It has been clinically diagnosed, and he makes a comment that this is pretty uncommon for his age. And the research on that, like, being that it's usually more likely to hit people in their mid-20s, and particularly for males, it is more likely to hit them in the mid-20s. So I was at least happy with that. But I will say, like, there was some things I really loved about this book and some things I was iffy and unsure about. The main thing, without spoiling this, so this follows Adam, and the whole plot about this is that he is going through an experimental drug. So he's in a clinical trial, which means they are testing this drug, and they are trying to see if it is viable for individuals with schizophrenia. So he is now in this clinical trial as a test participant, and they're just monitoring him to see how it goes. And because he's in the test subject, he also has to participate in therapy. But Adam has no interest in doing the therapy part, so the entirety of this book, he doesn't talk to his therapist. Instead, we are getting his point of view through journal entries that are being sent to the therapist. Because he won't talk to the therapist, he is journaling to him. So it's always talking to a you character, saying that you is the therapist that he is seeing. So sometimes he talks about the fact that like he's kind of making fun of the therapist for sitting there and trying to get Adam to talk, but Adam just won't. And then also saying like, making jokes about like, well, at least you're getting your paycheck and all of that. So Adam's going through this clinical trial. At the same time, he is going to a new school, which is a Catholic private school. He left his old school because there had been an incident where his hallucinations got the best of him, and it kind of got out, and he was getting bullied for that. So he left, went to a private school, and he is trying to keep his schizophrenia in check and not tell anybody that he is experiencing any side effects at all. He also becomes friends with some people unwillingly, and then he starts to see a girl named Maya, and Maya ends up dating Adam, and he is still very unwilling to tell Maya his secret, even though as the book progresses, his hallucinations get worse. So in regard to the schizophrenia diagnosis, I am not an expert. Despite the fact that I am a licensed professional counselor and I do work in community mental health, I do not specialize in schizophrenia or other psychotic diagnoses. I have very brief experience. I have had one teenage client who had some psychosis, and in particular was hearing voices, but it was not a consistent thing. And I also had like dabblings of usually like psychosis during something else happening. But I have not had any individuals who were schizophrenic completely or had like an ongoing psychosis diagnosis like schizotypal or some kind of schizoid personality disorder. So because of that, I can't say from personal experience if I think this is good representation or not, but it doesn't feel like good representation to me. I say this because what I know of schizophrenia, typically with hallucinations, in my very limited experience, they're not something that's ongoing all the time. Oftentimes it tends to be random things, or like it might be like things ongoing, but it can get worse during a certain periods. So the higher stress you have, or if there's some other like medical or mental health episode, then that might also increase the hallucinations. Adam sees things all the time. It's absolutely constant. So I just didn't feel like that was accurate. Like he does interact with the hallucinations, which is common. And he does know he has like a self-insight, which is also kind of common too. Like not everybody with schizophrenia, especially if you're just becoming like diagnosed or it's before you're diagnosed, like you might not know their hallucinations. But I've had like one instance where I did have a colleague that worked with someone diagnosed with schizophrenia, and they would often say like they would know, and that was kind of part of the treatment, was working through and identifying like that they aren't real and how to identify or tell if something is real or not real. So I think like the part that I don't like about this is that they don't really push the therapy part of this. Instead, they go right to medication, and they also go to an experimental medication because they're saying that Adam's schizophrenia is so severe. But they don't indicate if they have tried therapy and or other medications, because there are other medications out there. They don't seem to indicate that they try any of this. And that is a red flag to me, because normally like you don't get into like experimental drugs or medications or trials without having failed through everything else to begin with. So it's kind of unclear like when his schizophrenia and the hallucinations started, why they're so severe now, and why he didn't try anything else beforehand. So as a professional, it just doesn't seem like that part is realistic in the way it's portrayed. Like I said, I'm not schizophrenic. I also don't have clients that are like this. So if anyone has more knowledge than me, you can let me know if like seeing hallucinations 24/7, because he does in this book, like they're always present with him. I don't know if that is accurate or not. What I do know is that they do specifically say too that he is a paranoid schizophrenic, but I don't get really any sense that he has paranoia other than the fact that he's afraid people are going to find out. And that is not what paranoid schizophrenia means. So like you have a lot of behaviors that are trying to compensate for somebody coming to get you. So whether that's the government or aliens or something, like there's something to get you. So you might think there's cameras stashed in your house. You may think people have your phones tapped. Like that is the paranoia that tends to be common with paranoid schizophrenia, and none of that was present in the book. So I feel like it was misleading to say it was a paranoid schizophrenic adolescent because the paranoia wasn't there, in my personal opinion. So I could probably rant about this, and maybe I will. Maybe I will go in and do a book versus movie comparison and really go more in depth about this. But I just don't think I should do this anymore in this brief clip because it's going to go on forever. So let me know if you guys want to do a book versus movie comparison and let me go more into my thoughts. Leave a comment down below. But otherwise, I also had some hit or misses with like the general gist of it. I loved Adam's voice. I think his journal entries were sometimes funny and witty, and it was just very voicey. Julia Walton does a really good job at Adam's voice. Sometimes it was annoying, I'm not gonna lie. Like he definitely did sound like an adolescent boy sometimes, and then other times he sounded a little pretentious. Ultimately, like I definitely felt like he was a lot and it wasn't always a bad thing. But because this is a diary entry, I do feel like sometimes we lacked other aspects that would have been good if this was told in a real narrative. Like I really would like to have seen him being in therapy and actually getting something, or at least seeing him progress and start talking to his therapist. But he doesn't do that at all throughout the book, and that kind of felt like a missed opportunity to me. I also feel like there was too much sexual talk, and I don't know if it's just like me being an adult reading a teenager's point of view and discussing sex and getting a little bit more graphic than some other people would. Like they don't talk, it's not like erotica where you're getting like details, but he does talk about like thinking about it quite a lot. He talks about masturbation. He talks about his partner's body in graphic details and sometimes. So that was just a little bit too much for me. Like I just didn't want it because I wasn't like, I don't want to picture teenagers, to be fair. I didn't know that was going to be in the book going in. So it's just not my cup of tea. I'm not going to knock it because, again, I do think these things are important for teenagers to have access to and to understand. But it just didn't, it felt like it was kind of forced. And maybe it was just because we're trying to portray a hormonal teenage boy. I don't know. I also didn't like the fact that they brought up the Sandy Hook shootings. And I could see where this author was trying to make a point because I didn't actually know. I had to go do research. And what I found out is that the Sandy Hook shooter, his name was Adam. And he was later, they suspected that he had schizophrenia, but he had ongoing mental health issues. So I feel like the author might have been trying to make a point that like not all individuals with schizophrenia or mental health are bad people. I get it, but I don't feel like it was done well. And it just kind of left an ick in my mouth to name your main character the same name as the Sandy Hook shooter and then bring that up as something that happened in the novel. I don't know. I don't know. It didn't sit well with me. It might have been fine for other people, but I didn't like that part. What I did like, and this is a slight spoiler, and I won't go into details either, but there is a really, really like parent who stepped up in this book because the main character does not have a relationship with his dad. His dad walked out of his life and never came back. I think his stepdad has been in his life for about 5 years when we're in this book, but his stepdad does step up and like takes care of him and loves him like a real son. And I am a sucker for that. And there was a part at the end of this book that did make me tear up a little bit of like that was a really sweet moment. So yeah, overall, I would say that this book has a very like, I don't really feel like the plot of this was strong, and I don't feel like it was a character-driven book either. So that's why I feel like it's not gonna be a 4 or 5 for me. I would say maybe a 3 because I was expecting more to happen. Like I was expecting this big blow up, and I don't feel like it was a big blow up. It also kind of made me scratch my head and be like, the logistics of it, like that this happened. There's like a big reveal, but it happens in a place where it doesn't really make sense given that this takes place in 2013 and we have technology. I think it could have been done a different way, because the time and the place and the location that this all occurred in, like this big reveal, just kind of felt dumb to me. And yeah, also, I don't know. I don't feel like, because you're trying to make a point that like schizophrenia can be really scary for the person who experiences it, and therefore other people can be afraid of it. But I don't feel like it does that well enough for me. I wanted more. I wanted more of like a build up to the moment that we are supposed to be like, oh, no. And I just never felt that way. It kind of like happened, and then the ending happened, and I was kind of like, okay, all right, cool. So yeah, that's where we're at. I think I'll rate it probably like a 2.5 or 3. And I am going to watch the movie. So because I picked this for my book club, we are going to watch the movie all together. And we do have our discussion on Monday night. So today's Saturday. We have our discussion Monday. So I'm excited to see how it goes. And maybe I will do a comparison between the two in a different video later on. So thanks for listening to my rant.
You thought I was done with this book, didn't you? Well, joke's on me too, because I went to book club and my opinion on this book changed. It's kind of crazy sometimes when you think about like how conversation can influence your view of a piece of literature or media. But sure enough, book club convinced me that this was a 4-star. So I am changing my rating officially. So I do think some of what I already said, my initial thoughts on it, were still accurate. Like I still feel like the ending, like I didn't necessarily want like his schizophrenia to be demonized. So let me be clear on that. Like that, I didn't want it to be some like really big thing with his diagnosis. I will say, based on some of the conversations I had, some of my book club members were saying that they appreciated that it was quieter, because being quieter kind of took the focus off the actual diagnosis and more for Adam as a person and like his own struggles and coming to terms with his life. So I'm still torn. Like I still wanted something, and that was my valid initial reaction, but I do think I can appreciate the subtlety of the ending a little bit more now that it was discussed. One of my other co-hosts for my book club, who is also a licensed professional counselor, also pointed out a very like main point with schizophrenia and other psychotic diagnoses, is that it's not happening to us. So how can we really say what someone is experiencing? And I do appreciate her for saying that, because I think I was so stuck in my own head and like the like diagnosing part of this book that I kind of missed the fact that like anybody could experience anything, right? Like, so Adam seeing his hallucinations 24/7 is his own experience. So there's nothing to say that somebody can't do that, or even if it's a rarity that it would happen to somebody, right? Because it's in their head and that's what they are witnessing and how they are living life. And I am never going to experience that, most likely. So because of that, like I'm going to take a step back from diagnosing Bree. So long story short, I was in the middle of having like difficulty diagnosing somebody properly. And then I think I kind of projected it into this book. Because at the end of the day, this is literature. And additionally, like my friend pointed out, like this is a very like individualized experience, and everybody with some kind of schizophrenic or psychotic features may be very different from the next. So I want to recant a little bit of my diagnosing spiel and just say that like that's valid. And I think because of that, because after I took out that part of it, I really did enjoy the book, and I thought it was a really sweet story. I really liked the love story outside of the sex and feeling a little bit weird on that. Like I really thought it was a nice and a very realistic, healthy relationship. And I do think it's really hard to see healthy dynamics in young adult novels. And so that all said and done moved this back up to a 4 in my opinion. And I did really enjoy it. And I'll just say, as far as the movie goes, if I saw the movie first, I might have liked the movie. But I think the things that it does not sensationalize schizophrenia in this book. Like it keeps it very
like low key and personal, and really just tells a story about a boy who is struggling to fit in with his peers, which is a very common thing outside of diagnoses, right? The movie, I think, sensationalizes his diagnosis. They also just change really weird things in the movies. So I'm not going to go into detail, but there was just a lot of weird changes in the movie that detracted from the main story. And I feel like, again, it did sensationalize his diagnosis because of that. Like, the only thing I liked in the movie, which I liked similar to Turtles All the Way Down, is the visual effects that gave life to this diagnosis. Like, so for somebody who might not understand it, I thought the visualizations and the noises and the lighting, I think all of that was done really well to highlight his symptoms as well as the side effects from the drug he was experiencing. Because otherwise, I hated it. As a whole book club, we all hated the movie, and I would absolutely recommend going to read this. It's short, it's doable. Don't watch the movie. It was just not great. Oh, the main character of the movie was played by Charlie Plummer. Excellent. Perfectly casted. Did this main character justice as Adam. It was a shame it was in the script that it was written in. So those are all my thoughts on this book, and I am now done talking about it.
Hello friends, hi. We're about to talk about Aru Shah and the End of Time because I did another little sneaky sneak where I just read this and then never checked in about it. So I ended up picking this up on audio from the library using the Libby app because I just didn't know if I'd have enough time to sink into it. It's kind of wild because this is a pretty thick book. Like, I was very shocked by how long it was, especially when I read 2 young adult books that were shorter by a couple hours on audio. So I was just very shocked by the length of this, and I figured audio might be the best way to do it. And this is a story about a girl who is a middle grader named Aru Shah. Her family doesn't have a ton of money. Her mom is a curator for a museum, and she makes up a lot of lies about her life to seem a little bit more magical or interesting than she actually is. And it kind of starts this book where she is getting caught in a lie. So she basically says that this lamp in the museum has magical abilities and it's cursed. So she touches it to bring forth the curse and actually does enact a curse. And a whole adventure comes out from there where she has to kind of fix her mistakes and stop the end of time from happening. So even though this was a long book in comparison to some of the other books I've read over the last couple months, it did read pretty fast and I found it pretty interesting. I do feel like this is similar to Percy Jackson, but with Indian mythology rather than Greek mythology. It has similar beats to the first Percy Jackson. It also has like similar stakes, and I really enjoyed having Aru kind of discover her true identity, but how that is like she's still herself while also exploring this new side of her. And it was cute. It was really, really cute. And because of that, I don't have like a ton to say. I think I was right. This is the book that I picked for the author to give another chance to. And I was right. I do think Roshani Chokski's writing is beautiful and it does so well with middle grade. I think she was like the fluff that aggravated me in her YA books was kind of gone from this book, and I enjoyed it. I don't think this is like something I'm going to continue. I know this is the start of a series. I'm not interested in continuing it. I enjoyed this as it was, and I'm content with the story being ended here, even though there is room for a sequel. I'm just happy with this. I thought it was a fun time. I definitely think I would have middle graders that I would give this to, and if my nieces or nephews grow up and love to read, I will probably just gift this to them because I think it is something to be enjoyed. This does make me want to now pick up Roshani Chokski's adult book, which I also own, because when I was making this video, I completely forgot that I owned her adult debut, which was The Last Tale of the Flower Bride, and I do have that because it came in a fairy loot. So I think I'm going to read that one maybe next year. But for now, she's definitely not the worst author I've read, and she has a lot of range, I think, because this is very different in a lot of ways from her YA debut, and I'm happy about that. Hello, friends. Hi. So we are on a new day. I think it's like the 15th of December, and we have 2 books left. So today I'm going to start If I Stay, because I have a lot of shit to do today. I got this on audio and from the library, so I'm renting the audio, if you will, and it's only a 5-hour audiobook. I listen usually at like 1.75 speed. So in theory, I can finish this today because I really do have a lot of stuff to go over. Just for reference, I need to start wrapping all of these. It's getting overwhelming because I haven't done anything except for those, and they were wrapped at the store. They weren't even wrapped by me. But yeah, I have a lot of wrapping to do. It is the 15th, and I do think we might put up the Christmas tree today. I don't know. I've been a Grinch the last couple years. Like, it's just kind of like a lot of work when you're not feeling your best and then like nobody comes over anyway. But after last weekend when I like completely cleaned my house and like I felt really good about that, I was kind of like, well, you know what? Like maybe we could put up a tree. Like it's clean now. Like we don't have to do the extra work, because I think that also was a big thing of like, okay, we have to like first clean the house and then we have to set everything up, and then in just like 20 days we have to take it back down again. So I'm trying to like get out of that mindset. But I think I'm going to start with kind of wrapping today. And I also have to do a couple errands. Like I do need to do some laundry. I want to change my bed sheets. I would like to vacuum the floors again because I try to do that like 2-3 times a week because of dogs. And I also have to put some dishes away. There's dishes that are washed in the dishwasher. I have to put those away. Maybe this is a stretch goal, like maybe clean up the bathrooms, like just like, you know, clean the toilets, the sinks, that kind of stuff, and just kind of freshen it up. But ultimately, too, I do need to run to the store. We are out of milk. We are almost out of laundry detergent. And since I have to do laundry today, I kind of need to go get more. I need to get some artichokes because I am making a Parmesan artichoke dip for my book club meeting tomorrow. And I have everything else but the artichokes. I need to go get more. So I'm going to start this on audio. And the only thing I know is that I believe, like, I think this main character is in a coma. So I'm not sure if it's like a religious connotation, but I do know something that like she gets into like a car accident, is in a coma, and she's deciding on if she should stay on Earth or move on, I think. I know this was pretty big back in the day, but I truthfully don't know much more about it, and I would like to watch the movie after this too. Like basically, I'm just getting all these books with movies off my shelf and off my to watch list because I really did want to see it back in the day, but then I was like, well, I have to read the book first, and then I never did. So here we are. So I will take you along the ride of me doing some of these things. I may not film all of it, but I'm going to have some clips, I promise. I'm not going to just come in when it's done. I hope. All right, I'll check in later. Okay, we are 1 chapter in, and I like it so far. I like the writing style. I like kind of the quirkiness of the family. But yeah, there's no holding back. You are immediately thrown in, and goodness, like the feels hit me pretty quickly. I'm like, oh gosh, like this, I know what's gonna happen. And I don't think I realized. I think I understand now why she's trying to decide if she should stay or not. And I don't know, this is an old book, so I'm gonna just spoil the first chapter, but like, I'm pretty sure her entire family just died in the car accident, and that's why she's trying to choose if she should stay. Is that like, should I stay on Earth where like I might have a successful life ahead of me, but my family's gonna be dead? Or should I move on and be with my family? I think that makes sense now, but I didn't realize that. So I was like, as soon as the accident happened, I was like, oh no. Ugh. So I don't know, maybe I'm gonna cry in this book too. But I also thought it was funny / weird that the last book I read had a main character named Adam, and the girlfriend was a different character. And now in this book, we are in the perspective of the main female character, but her boyfriend is Adam. Just a weird coincidence that both boys in both novels I read back to back are both Adam now. So, all right, onward and upward. Dude, I don't know if I missed this or if her name wasn't just mentioned until the 2nd chapter, but the main character's name is Mia. So literally, I just had a book where it was Adam and Maya, and now I'm having a book where it's Mia and Adam. What?
Was that just a popular, like, duo back in, like, 10 years ago? Jesus. That is so strange. Anyway, okay, moving on.
Hello, easy, how you do? Yeah, I've been holding out for you. Goodbye, gray sky, come back blue. Tell me all you'd like to do. When I found love, you were waiting there for me. When I found love, it was there for all to see. Been searching low and high for you, never certain but always true. When I found love, yeah, you found it too.
Well, it doesn't look like much, but I have gifts wrapped. There's some out here too. Oh gosh.
I try not to get too overwhelmed. I can get overwhelmed very easily. But we just have a lot of people to shop for between both me and my husband. So anyway, though, I have been pretty absorbed. I am now about 60% through. So as I predicted, I figured I could finish this book today, and I think I'm going to do it. So far I really like it, actually. Like, it is very interesting to kind of, because like basically she's going back and forth from like before the accident to like her kind of wandering in this limbo and deciding whether she wants to stay or not. And you kind of understand like who she is as a person and like why she may choose what she's going to choose. At this point, I don't know what she's going to choose. I'm assuming, because it's a young adult novel, she's going to choose to stay. But I don't know. I guess we'll find out. So I have to take a break now from wrapping. My dogs need to go to the bathroom, so I figured I am going to go do my outside errands. So I am going to run up to my mom's house. I have to get a gift that I shipped to my mom's house for my husband, because I knew if it came here, he was going to know immediately what it was, and I didn't want that to happen. So I'm going to go pick that up. On the way back, there's a restaurant like not far from my mom's house that I have to get a gift card for. Then I'm going to go and get a grab bag gift because I forgot to get that yesterday. And then I have to run to the store for the artichokes and the laundry detergent. So I think overall, I'm feeling pretty good about where I'm at. And this will be a nice little like break now. So, all right. Hi, friends. So it is 3:44. I took a little bit longer getting the things that I needed, but all of my Christmas shopping is officially done. And so is If I Stay. It was a really quick read / listen. And I actually don't have too much to say about it. I enjoyed it actually a lot. I'm glad that it wasn't just like the romance that was driving this book. I do think like the romance had like a good part in it, but I felt like it was very balanced between the romance, the friendships, and the family relationships. And I like that like it mattered, like her seeing all of her people, but like I still kind of thought it was cute with the ending with the boyfriend and like how it wrapped up. So yeah, I think, this was one I wanted to choose for a book that I had signed and I never read. And it also could have fit into the category of, kind of missed the boat on, where like it was a book that was super popular back in the day and I just never got around to it. So with The Lovely Bones, I feel like I really wasn't missing anything with that one. But I think like I definitely would have been like in love with If I Stay should I have read it when it came out. Not to say that I didn't like it. I would probably give this a 4-star read, but I think I probably would have given it a 5-star had I read it back in the day. But yeah, I don't have a lot to say. It was a good book. It was a nice read, and it definitely kept me going as I was wrapping presents. Now I'm getting a little bit farther, but I still have a lot to go. So I think I'm going to turn on some music now and finish it up. And then I will come back in a day or two to talk about what I'm starting next. Man, I hate that every year I have one book that I either can't finish or can't read, but here we are. So the problem with having arcs on your shelf forever, because this did come out in like 2017, and I believe that this arc was in 2016, is that things can change after so many years. So there is a reason I'm not going to read this. So the smaller reason is that I just read the first chapter and was not feeling it. And because I wanted to end the year on a very positive note, I really didn't want to put myself in a reading slump with this book. The second reason, which is the bigger one and the more important one, which is why I didn't push through, is because this book in its current iteration no longer exists. So that's right. So I think I mentioned earlier in this vlog, maybe when I was first doing this, that the author on Instagram had actually announced that she obtained the rights back to her duology. So it was Traveler and Dreamer, and she now has the rights back. What I didn't realize is that she, I believe, is re-releasing these. So you cannot get like a copy of this anywhere right now. Like the ebooks have been pulled. You can no longer buy this at all. The only way you could do it is if you have one, an arc, or two, you had the book before. Or I guess you can probably find a used copy on Amazon. But yeah, this book is no longer in existence. The author is going to re-release the first book, Traveler, and its sequel, Dreamer. And she announced that she will be completing this as a trilogy. And I believe the third book is called Wayfarer. So because of that, I just felt like it wasn't right to read this book, this ancient book at this point. And I want to be able to give this author the benefit of the doubt. She is re-releasing it and editing it more. Like, I don't know what her plans are, but I don't really want to read this book and go off of everything, you know what I mean, from just this that's no longer in print. So yeah, I'm just not going to read it. I'm going to pass on this arc. I'm going to probably put it in a free little library somewhere. And, you know, other people may pick it up and be interested, and maybe they will find their way to the author. And by the time they read it, they will be able to pick up her new released book and the sequel when it comes out. But for this vlog, and also because this vlog is so long, we're just going to end it here. So I'm so sorry if anybody was excited about this book. I'm just not going to read it here, and that's it. And with that, this last vlog of 2024 is complete. So we read 6 books in this, well, we read 5 books, and then one didn't really start, I guess, which is pretty good. It's a pretty good solid year, I think. I'm going to put this in a free little library and not read it as it is. I bumped this up to a 4, and I think overall it was one of the best reads I had in this lot. This was very cute, and I likely will give it to a younger kid in my life, a niece or nephew, or a friend's child, because I think some little kid will absolutely love this. I really liked it. I thought it was great, but it's not something I want to continue in as a series. This was probably my favorite book of the bunch, surprisingly. I really loved it, and I liked it so much that I already listened to the sequel. I'm still going to keep this as a 3. I'm not going to continue. I'm going to donate this. I will probably also put it in either a free little library, or I will wrap it and put it in my blind date with a book club section that we have. I do think there will be an audience for this, but for me, it just took way too long to get into for me to want to continue the series. And by far, one of the worst books I've read of the year. I'd never want to think about this book again or the movie. I just don't like it, and it was kind of a waste of time. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me with this monster vlog. I hope that you had a fun time, or at least loved to listen to me rant, because that seems to be the majority of this video. I am not going to do another separate video on you picking my 2025 TBR, but over on my Instagram, as well as in my community tab here on YouTube, I did post a picture of a bookshelf, 2 bookshelves actually, of books that have been on my shelves for quite some time and things that I have not picked up in several years. So if you are interested, you are welcome to go over to the picture and maybe pick out some books you would be interested in me reading in 2025. And, you know, if there's enough interest, I may do another vlog of reading those books as well. And I will leave the Instagram post as well as the community post in the description, so you can click on that and go right to it. Yeah, that is it for me. And that is it for 2024. So let me know, guys, if you made it this far, give me a peace sign, because we are peacing out of this year. And yeah, let me know if you've read any of these books and your thoughts on them, or if I have convinced you to read any of them based on either my raves or my rants. And until next year, I'll see you then. Bye.